When you think of a caftan, you might immediately visualize Elizabeth Taylor swooning around her beautifully flowing silk robes, or your mind might float its way to the 1970s and be Arthur in Maude, or even Mrs. Roper for the 1977 to 1984 sitcom Three's Company. The caftan has recently experienced a resurgence in popularity, partly due to the tiki community, as well as vintage reproduction sewists who have been scooping up caftan sewing patterns. Social media is abuzz with the stylish, lounge-worthy garments. I even have plans to make one or two myself. The caftan, however, isn't a modern invention. It has a long, rich history that goes beyond the 1970s. If you want to find out more about the caftan, keep watching. Hello and welcome to Killer Kitsch Lizzie, my weird little world where I like to knit and sew and do other crafty things. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the history of the caftan. Now, before we jump into the history of the caftan, I just wanted to talk about why I'm doing these types of videos. In particular, it has to do with honoring and respecting the culture that is related to the garment. And I think that it is very important to understand the origins and the history. A lot of vintage and vintage reproduction fans and creators and sewists and lovers have very lovingly dove into creating garments from certain cultures or eras, and the caftan is one of those examples. It has seen a huge resurgence in the last little while due to like the vintage and tiki communities, and from everything that I know, they are doing it very respectfully. But I just thought it would be interesting and important to understand the background and history of what and where the caftan came from. And that goes with any kind of vintage garments. During the 30s and 40s and even the 50s, you see that the fashion industry had embraced things like the kimono and, you know, the caftan and hostess sets and things like that, and they all originated from other cultures, and I don't think it was necessarily done disrespectfully, but I just think that it is more important that you know a little bit about that garment's lineage, and that way you can understand its beginnings, more about the culture it came from, and then you can wear it a little more respectfully. I hope that all made sense. So I also just want to mention, this is not going to be a super duper intensive history lesson type thing. That would require me to do several parts, and because there is such a breadth of information about this garment, it sees origins in so many different cultures that I can't cover everything in a 20 to 30 minute video. So I am going to do my best to explain the different cultures and the history. If this is something that you're interested in, I am more than happy to do a multi-part series just on this garment, because not only does it deserve it, there's just so much information out there and history out there that it can easily be done. So if that is something that is of interest, and I do get enough interest, I am more than happy to do a several part series. Now, onto the history. A caftan is a garment whose design is a variation of a robe or a tunic. I'll get a little more in depth where it possibly originated, But the general knowledge of the caftan is it did come from Asia. And it has been worn by many different cultures for thousands of years. Some cultures also have slight variations of their own style of caftan, and it could be different colors, it could be just different shapes, but they all consider it a caftan. Also, a caftan can be made from a multitude of fabrics, from wool, cashmere, silk, or cotton. Most of the time it's either worn with a sash or has a sash built into the garment or worn loose. It can be made with plain fabric or it can be incredibly elaborate with beading, sequins, dye, and like different kinds of dyes and embroidery. Plainer fabric caftans are normally worn by everyday people, and something that would be more elaborate would be worn by either heads of state or royalty. In some cases, it would be worn as a day-to-day garment, and in other cases, it would be for more special occasions and would be like an entire ensemble. Many different layers that would go into what they were wearing. In some cases, it would also have different lengths. So it could be just below the knee, or it could actually be floor length. It could also be fitted, or it could be flowing and loose. Some believe it is based on the Japanese kimono, while others argue that the original caftan is based on the ones worn in the 830s by the Byzantine Empire. When you look at today's caftans, they resemble more of a Middle Eastern one as opposed to the kimono. However, you can see where the possible origins have come from in regards to the kimono. The caftan wasn't just worn in Japan or the Middle East. Many other cultures also embraced this beautiful flowing garment. The history of the caftan can be seen in Africa, Asia, and Russia. From my research, the earliest version of the caftan seems to have been worn in the 830s. Having problems with that. In the Byzantine Empire, as I just mentioned, the caftan was very popular in hot climates, and that was due to the breathability of the fabric and the fact that it was loose and flowing, giving way to air circulation. And also, you could cover up most of your body from the sun and still stay cool. Most caftans are long sleeved, but again, they have very large loose sleeves. Another incredibly interesting part of the caftan history is that it appears to be the oldest Turkish dress. It can be traced back as far as the Hun, the Ottomans, and the Göktürk periods, and these garments can also be found in some of the Hun tombs that have been discovered. They're finding a lot of caftans that are not maybe fully intact, but enough intact that they recognize what that garment was. Many of these garments were manufactured from fabrics made in places such as Istanbul and Bursa. But some of those fabrics came as far away as places like Venice, Genoa, Persia, India, and sometimes even China. I can only imagine how stunning these fabrics were and what a full caftan would have looked like, either, you know, as everyday wear, or especially if it was for somebody of royalty, or like a head of state, or some sort of ceremonial style caftan. They would have been luxurious and absolutely breathtaking. Depending on what part of the world you're in, you would wear the caftan differently. For example, in West Africa, the caftan was worn by both men and women, and usually with a robe that was pulled over the head, and it would have pants with a drawstring at the waist. In Russia, it refers to the style of men's long suits and tight sleeves with tighter sleeves. Other countries and communities might wear the caftan belted, while others will have it remain completely loose. Different countries would have different types of fabrics, colors, and textures. This would all depend on the fabrics that were available to them at the time, and the fabrics would be, and the types of fabrics that would be most comfortable for them in their actual climate. So hotter climates would be looser, lighter, probably a looser weave in some cases, more like cottons, that kind of thing. And colder climates, you would see heavier fabrics like wool. Different religious communities would also wear kaftans, such as Jewish communities or the Muslim communities. In those cases, they would be a specific color or worn in a very specific way due to the different culture or religion. So that was a brief history of the kaftan, sort of bringing us slightly up to modern times. As I mentioned before, I'm more than happy to do a more in-depth series. I could do multiple episodes just on the kaftan, breaking it up into different, time periods or different cultures or different religions. Like, there is no end to where this could go. So let me know. Now, bringing us to the modern times, what would a modern kaftan be? As I mentioned, the tiki community has embraced this stunning garment, and you will see multitudes of fabrics and styles and shapes and lengths, and you name it. They have fully embraced this wonderful garment. Now, but going back a little bit before that, you would have seen kaftans in movies, television, magazines, and photographed on celebrities going back as far as the 1950s. As many types of fashion go, it does get popularized by celebrities, and I think Elizabeth Taylor was probably the most well-known celebrity to wear kaftans. There are many, many photos of her wearing them. She did tend to wear them kind of later in her life, when she was a child actor and working in the 40s and the 50s, early part of the 50s. I don't think there were many photos of her or any photos of her wearing kaftans, but later on she did wear them quite often, but not casual, like as in a casual attire. She would dress them up, wear them out to galas and award ceremonies, and yeah, she was photographed very often in it. Other people that were seen, celebrities that were seen in it, would be someone like Marlon Brando. There are, I don't think, a lot of photos. He became a very reclusive, private person, like extremely reclusive later in his life. So I don't know if there's a ton of photos out there of him, but he was definitely someone who was known to wear them. And of course on television. And she is my favorite part of the show, Three's Company, Mrs. Roper. She always wore I think she always wore kaftans. I might be misremembering this, but I think she might have worn pantsuits occasionally. Maybe I'm wrong. But she was definitely someone that you would see wearing them. B. Arthur in Maude would have worn like a variations of the kaftan as well. There are some British television shows from I want to say the 70s, probably early 80s, where you would see caftans in that as well. And going back to Mrs. Roper, her character was so delightful, and she would dress up her caftans with like these outrageous chunky jewelry and that red, super curly red hair. And because of that and our appreciation for Mrs. Roper, she now has her own official day every year where a large group of men and women dress up like her, and sometimes they'll have a parade, sometimes they'll do like a like bar hopping kind of thing. Or different kinds of events with about or like with a way to celebrate her. And I haven't done it yet. We do have an event. Well, actually, I think there's two events that happen here in Toronto, fairly close together. And I'm hoping for the next one that I can actually go, because I actually do have a pattern. I'm going to talk more about this in a minute, and I do want to make both of these caftans actually. I'm going to come to that in a minute. So I'm hoping to get myself a red wig and make a caftan and actually go to... I've got tons of chunky jewelry, so I just need the wig and I just need to make that. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So before its current wave of popularity, the caftan was incredibly popular in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it was also boldly embraced by the hippie culture. In the 1950s, designers such as Christian Dior and Cristobal incorporated caftan-inspired designs into many of their collections. And that included dresses and coats. And the dresses, in many cases, would have very high slits. As they are today, they are worn for a variety of reasons, from lounging at home to wearing them by the pool to, of course, dressing for a hostess duty or participating in some sort of fun event. As with the historical versions of the caftan, you would see, even today, you see them with cottons up to very, very, very fancy silks and sometimes even brocades. As we move into the 1960s and 70s, the caftan now becomes associated with the hippie and bohemian cultures. And I think there's one or two ways that when we think about the caftan today, you either associate it with, you know, like Elizabeth Taylor, Mrs. Roper, or with the hippie culture. And as I just mentioned, Elizabeth Taylor was photographed many times wearing caftans. Now, as we're moving into the 1970s, the caftan has become a regular part of television shows. As I mentioned, B. Arthur wore it in Maude, Mrs. Roper, of course, but you will start to see it in a lot of 1970s shows, especially television more than movies, where maybe one of the characters in a show is like a hostess for an event, or somebody's wearing them by the pool, or they're wearing it casually around the house. I think, if I remember correctly, and if I can find a clip, I will put it up. I do remember Mrs. Brady from the Brady Bunch wearing a caftan. More of the slimmer fitting one, I think. If I can find a photo, I'm going to put it up. Again, this could be like, I'm not might not be remembering this properly, but if I can find a photo. And now getting to this. I've been wanting to like for ages I've been wanting to make myself one. I've had this pattern for a couple of years now. And I had a hard time actually hunting this down. And the reason it says this is a 1970s vintage pattern. It took me a couple of years to find it actually in my size. This comes in two different size ranges. And I gotta tell you, to find one was nearly impossible, and to find one that has never been opened was sort of like a unicorn of this pattern. And I hunted for years, and I finally found this from a seller in Australia. It took a while to get here, a couple weeks, and now it's been sitting in my to sew pile for a couple years. But I need to get it done, and I'm going to do it this year, or at least before the next Mrs. Roper event. Now, because the Caftan has become super popular, and before I found this, or sorry, after I found this, not before, after I found this, there are vintage reproduction designers now doing this pattern, and Gertie is one of them. Gertie has a Patreon. I've made many of her patterns from there and from her charm website. And had I waited, but it's okay. Anyways, I have a few different options now for caftans. And I gotta tell you, if you're gonna make any garment, other than like, you know, sewing a skirt, a caftan is incredibly easy to sew, especially this one here, because there is like minimal shaping. You are literally sewing two rectangles together, and then you are putting a waist. I'll do a close-up photo of this. There's going to be a waist bit here. And even the one on this side it's not that hard. I'm trying to remember if that one is cut. I think this has a cut-on sleeve as well, so you don't even have to insert sleeves. And you can even self-draft your own caftan. Like I said, you are sewing together two rectangles. I also don't want to just make it only for summer. I want to make caftans that I can wear all year long, whether it be here or to dress it up to go out. So it will happen. And there are not just caftans like these two styles. There are many other different styles other than just these two. So there's a lot of options out there. Okay, so that is my history lesson on the caftan. And if you liked this kind of video, please give me a thumbs up. Please comment below, do you own any caftans? Have you made your own? Do you plan on making one? Also, going back to the vintage community, many of them are always on the hunt for actual original ones, like vintage originals. So let me know if you own several of those. And that is it for the caftan, a little bit of a history lesson. I am more than happy to do a more in-depth series about this. If I get enough interest, I will do it. But yeah, that is it for today. And until next time, stay kitschy. Bye!